The year was 2347, and humanity had built colonies across 17 different star systems. People lived on distant moons and planets that their ancestors could only dream about. But Earth was still the heart of everything. It was a beautiful blue planet protected by giant defense stations floating in orbit. The Terran Naval Command had its headquarters there. Watching over all of human space, Admiral Catherine Moore was 62 years old. She had gray hair that she always kept pulled back tight. Her face was hard from decades of service, and she rarely showed any emotion. On this particular morning, she stood at the observation window of Station Sentinel, drinking her coffee and looking out at the stars. Then everything changed. The alien fleet appeared out of nowhere. One moment, the space beyond the moon was empty. The next moment, 300 massive ships filled the darkness. They came out of fold space in perfect formation, moving as one. Each ship was shaped like a giant black wedge, covered with weapons that made human ships look like toys. Catherine had never seen anything like them. Nobody had. She put down her coffee cup. Her hand was steady even though her heart was racing. The message came within minutes. It played on every screen across Earth and every human colony at the same time. The aliens called themselves the Dominion of Keth, and their words were cold and simple. Species designation: human. You have expanded beyond your permitted boundaries. Your military vessels have entered sovereign Keith territory. You will surrender unconditionally. You will dismantle your fleet. You will accept governance under the Dominion. You have one planetary rotation to comply. Failure to comply will result in extinction. The message repeated over and over in every human language. Whatever technology the Keth had was far beyond anything humanity possessed. Catherine watched the alien fleet holding position just past the moon. She had served 40 years in the Terran Navy. She had fought pirates in the asteroid belts and rebels on the outer colonies. She had faced death many times and never blinked. But she had never felt fear quite like this. Her aide, Lieutenant Daniel Brooks, came running up to her with a tablet in his hands. He was young, maybe 25, with fear written all over his face. "Admiral, the Security Council is meeting in Geneva. President Martinez wants you there through HoloLink right away." Catherine nodded slowly. Her eyes never left the alien ships. "Tell them I am on my way." In Geneva, the emergency meeting had already turned into chaos. Representatives from every colony world were shouting over each other. Some demanded immediate surrender. Others called for negotiations. A few hardliners insisted that humanity should fight back. Nobody could agree on anything. President Elena Martinez sat at the head of the long council table. She was 53 years old, with dark eyes that missed nothing. Before becoming president, she had been a diplomat. She was good at reading people, good at finding solutions, but she had never faced anything like this. Beside her sat General Victor Huang, the commander of all ground forces, a quiet man with a soldier's discipline. Admiral. Moore's hologram flickered to life in the chair reserved for Naval Command. "We cannot fight them," Senator Paul Wright from the Mars colonies was saying. His voice shook with barely controlled panic. "Look at those ships. Our entire combined fleet would not last 1 hour against that kind of firepower. Surrender is the only rational option. We have to think about our children, our families," demanded Governor Lisa Campbell from the Proxima settlement. She was a tough woman who had built her colony from nothing. "They said governance under their dominion. We do not even know what that means. Does it mean slavery? Does it mean they will kill us all anyway? They gave us no real terms, no conditions. Just submit or die," the shouting continued. Some representatives were crying. Others were red-faced with anger. The whole room was falling apart. Admiral Moore's hologram spoke up. Something in her voice made everyone stop and listen. "I've had my analysts studying their vessels since they arrived. The energy signatures suggest weapons technology at least 200 years more advanced than our own. Senator Wright is correct that a direct engagement would be disastrous for us." "Then we surrender," Wright said quickly. Looking relieved, I was not finished. Catherine's voice cut through the room like a blade. "A direct engagement would be disastrous. But humanity does not fight direct engagements. We never have. Throughout our entire history, we have always been outmatched. We were outmatched by nature when we lived in caves. We were outmatched by disease when plagues swept across continents. We were outmatched by the cold emptiness of space when we first left Earth. And yet here we are, still standing. President Martinez leaned forward, interested. What are you suggesting, Admiral? I am suggesting that we do not know what surrender really means for us. We do not know if the Keth will honor any agreement. We do not know anything about them, except that they want us to give up. Catherine's eyes grew hard in the hologram. What we do know is that they expect us to fold. They expect us to be afraid and do whatever they say. I recommend we give them something else instead. The debate went on for hours. Messages flooded in from colonies across human space. Billions of people wanted answers that nobody had. Fear spread like wildfire through every city on every world. Finally, President Martinez called for a vote. The representatives cast their decisions one by one. The result was close, much closer than anyone expected. But when the counting was done, humanity had made its choice. Elena Martinez stood up and walked to the broadcast cameras. She knew that billions of eyes were watching her. She knew the Keth fleet was listening to every word. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was rock steady. People of Earth and the United Terran Federation, she began, we have received the demands of the Dominion of Keth. They have demanded our unconditional surrender. They have threatened our complete destruction. She took a slow breath. Throughout our history, humanity has faced countless threats. We have faced ice ages that nearly froze us out of existence. We have faced plagues that killed millions. We have faced tyrants who wanted to enslave us and dictators who wanted to destroy us. We have faced the cold emptiness of space itself. And every single time, someone told us to give up, submit. To accept our fate quietly, her jaw tightened. We have never been very good at that. She looked directly into the camera, directly at whoever was watching from those black alien ships. To the Dominion of Keth, I say this: we will not surrender. We will not dismantle our fleet. We will not accept rule by a power that offers only threats and demands. If you want humanity, you will have to fight for every planet, every station, every ship. You will have to earn every inch with blood. And you will learn what every enemy in our history has learned. She leaned closer. Humanity does not go quietly. The broadcast ended. Across human space, the reaction was immediate. Some people cheered wildly in the streets. Some people cried with fear. Some just stared at their screens, unable to believe what they had just heard. On Station Sentinel, Admiral Catherine Moore watched the alien fleet begin to move toward Earth. The first Keth ships accelerated past the moon, their weapons powering up. Signal all vessels, she said calmly to Lieutenant Brooks. Battle stations. Tell every captain to make every shot count. And tell them, she paused, watching death approach. Tell them to make humanity proud. The Keth had conquered 1,000 species across 100,000 years. Every single one had surrendered eventually. Every single one had learned that resistance was pointless. They were about to discover that humanity was different. The Keth attack came at dawn, Earth time. The sun was just rising over the Pacific Ocean when the alien fleet opened fire. Commander, no Price was aboard the destroyer Relentless when the alarms started screaming. He was 34 years old with short brown hair and a small scar on his chin from a training accident years ago. He had served in the Navy for 12 years, but he had never seen real combat. He had trained for it, dreamed about it, sometimes feared it, but it had always been something that might happen someday. Someday had arrived. Like all hands to battle stations, he ordered. His voice came out calm and steady, which surprised him because his heart was beating so fast he could hear it in his ears. Helm, bring us around to face the enemy. Tactical, find me something to shoot at. Lieutenant Amy Nguyen worked at her console with flying fingers. She was the best tactical officer Nathan had ever served with, quick and smart under pressure. Commander, I am counting 50 Keth vessels breaking away from the main fleet. They are heading straight for the orbital defense platforms. Nathan watched the tactical display on the main screen. Red dots representing enemy ships moved toward the thin blue line that represented humanity's defenses. The orbital platforms were massive stations armed with railguns and missile batteries. They had been built to stop asteroids and pirates. They had never been designed to fight something like this. "Signal the fleet," Nathan said. "All ships engage at maximum range. We need to buy the platforms time too." He never finished the sentence. The first Keth weapons fired, and 3 blue dots simply vanished from the screen. 3 human frigates, each with a crew of 200, gone in the blink of an eye. "Our shields are holding," Amy reported. Her voice was tight, but she kept working. "But their weapons are cutting through our other ships like they are made of paper." Nathan made a quick decision. There was no time to second-guess himself. "Helm, take us in. Full speed ahead. Tactical, target their weapon systems. If we cannot match their firepower, we will get close enough that our smaller guns can do some damage." The Relentless surged forward, joining a ragged line of Terran vessels, charging directly at the Keth formation. Nathan knew it looked like madness. He knew it was probably suicide, but running away was not an option. If they ran, the Keth would destroy the platforms, and then they would destroy Earth. Some things were worth dying for. On the surface of Earth, General Victor Huang coordinated the ground defense from a bunker buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The facility was called Cheyenne Complex. It had been built over a century ago, designed to survive orbital bombardment. Whether it could survive Keth weapons was a question nobody wanted to answer. "We are losing the orbital platforms," his aide, Captain Sandra Kim, reported. Her face was pale as she read the data streaming across her screen. "The Keth are pushing through our defenses." Victor studied the holographic map floating above the command table. Blue lights representing defensive positions flickered and disappeared one by one. "What about the evacuation of the cities?" "It is happening in all major population centers. But we are talking about billions of people, General. We cannot move them all. There's not enough time, not enough transport, not enough shelters." Victor had known that from the moment he first saw the alien fleet. He had done the math. No matter what they did, millions of people were going to die today. His job was to make sure it was millions instead of billions. "Focus on getting people into the underground shelters," he said. "Every person below ground is a person who might survive, and get me Admiral Moore on the communication line." In orbit, Admiral Catherine Moore directed the battle from her flagship, the carrier Valiant. The fight was going badly. Half her fleet had been destroyed in the first 20 minutes. The Keth weapons cut through shields like they were not even there. They turned proud warships into expanding clouds of hot debris. Catherine had lost many friends already. Good captains, brave crews, people she had known for decades. She did not have time to mourn them. She could only keep fighting and hope their sacrifice meant something. "Admiral General Huang is calling from the surface." Catherine accepted the communication. Victor's tired face appeared on her personal screen. "General, Catherine, we need to pull back what is left of the fleet. Form a defensive line and protect the evacuation corridors. If we pull back, they will have a clear shot at the surface installations. The defense batteries, the communication centers, everything." "I know." Victor's face showed the weight of command, the terrible mathematics of war. "We are already taking direct hits. 3 kinetic strikes in the Pacific region, 2 more in Asia. Casualties are in the millions, and the number is climbing fast." Catherine closed her eyes for just one moment. When she opened them, her expression was set like stone. "Understood? All ships, execute tactical withdrawal. Form a defensive perimeter around the evacuation routes. Protect the civilian transports at all costs." As the battered remains of the Terran fleet pulled back, the Keth pressed their advantage. Landing craft dropped through Earth's atmosphere like a deadly rain. Enormous transport vessels released thousands of Keth soldiers onto the surface, in the streets of New York City. Sergeant Maria Santos led her squad through the ruins of what had once been Times Square. The buildings around them were burning. The famous digital billboards were dark and shattered. Smoke filled the air so thick that breathing hurt. Above them, Keth dropships circled like hungry vultures, looking for prey. "Keep moving," Maria ordered her soldiers. "We need to reach the subway tunnels. That is our rally point." Private Chris Walker stumbled along beside her. He was young, barely 20 years old, and his face was white with shock. A piece of concrete had cut his forehead, and blood ran down into his eyes. "Sarge, what are we supposed to do? Our weapons barely scratch those things. How are we supposed to fight them?" Maria grabbed his arm and pulled him upright. She was 31 years old, a career soldier, tough as nails. She had never faced anything like this either. But she could not let her squad see her fear. "We do what soldiers have always done," she said firmly. "We fight. We make them pay for every block, every building, every inch of ground. We protect the people who cannot protect themselves. Now move your feet, Private." That is an order. They made it to more blocks before the first Keth patrol found them. The aliens were terrifying up close. They stood about 7 feet tall, with gray skin that looked like hard shell. Each one had 4 arms ending in claws that could cut through steel. They wore black armor that seemed to drink in the light. Their weapons fired beams of superheated plasma that could melt through concrete walls.
Out.
"Open fire," Maria screamed, and her squad unloaded everything they had. Most of the bullets bounced off the Keth armor without doing any damage. But a few lucky shots found gaps at the joints where the armor pieces connected. One alien stumbled and went down. Another fell when Private Stacy Morgan put 3 rounds directly into its helmet visor. Maria felt a wild surge of hope. They can die. She shouted, "Keep shooting. Aim for the joints, aim for the face." The squad fought a running battle through the burning streets, ducking behind wrecked cars and collapsed walls. They lost 2 soldiers, good people whose names Maria would never forget. But they killed for Keth before escaping into the subway tunnels. It was not much. Maria knew it was not nearly enough. But it proved something important. The Keth could be killed. As night fell over a burning Earth, humanity counted its losses. 17 million people had died in the first day of the invasion. The orbital defenses were shattered. 3/4 of the fleet was destroyed, or too damaged to fight. The Keth had established landing zones on every continent, and their forces were spreading outward like a dark wave. But humanity had not. Surrendered in the bunker beneath the mountains. President Martinez spoke to what remained of her government through a secure channel. "We knew the first days would be terrible," she said. "We knew we would lose people. But every day we survive, we learn. Every battle teaches us more about how they fight, how their weapons work, where their weaknesses are." Admiral Moore, appearing through HoloLink from her damaged flagship, added her voice. "The Keth communications we have intercepted show they are surprised by our resistance. They expected us to collapse in the first hour. They did not expect us to fight back like this." "Good," said General Huang. "Let us keep surprising them." And across the burning world, in the wreckage of destroyed cities and shattered fleets, humanity refused to break. 6 months had passed since the invasion began, and humanity had still not surrendered. The Keth controlled the major cities. They controlled the factories and the spaceports. They had set up their government buildings and their police forces. They had created programs to teach humans how to obey, how to serve, how to accept their new masters. They expected people to fall in line quietly like every other species they had conquered. They were wrong. In the dark forests of the Pacific Northwest, Commander Hannah Shaw moved silently through the trees. She led a group of 40 resistance fighters, all dressed in stolen Keth equipment and carrying weapons made from salvaged parts. The pre-dawn air was cold and damp. Their breath came out in small white clouds. Hannah was 36 years old, with short black hair and sharp green eyes. Before the invasion, she had been a naval pilot, flying combat missions from the carrier Valiant. That life seemed like a distant dream now. A Keth plasma bolt had sent her ship spiraling into the ocean during the first week of the war. She had survived, barely pulled from the freezing water by fishermen who had become resistance fighters themselves. Now she led them. "Target is ahead," whispered Jacob Cole, her second in command. He crouched beside her in the underbrush, binoculars pressed to his eyes. Before the war, he had been a history professor at a university. He used to love teaching about ancient battles and famous generals. Now he carried a rifle made from parts of destroyed Keth. weapons, and knew 50 different ways to kill an alien soldier. Hannah raised her own binoculars. The Keth supply depot spread across what had once been a logging camp about half a kilometer ahead. Dozens of prefabricated buildings surrounded a landing pad where cargo shuttles came and went every few hours. Guards patrolled the perimeter in slow circuits, their tall alien forms easy to spot against the gray morning sky. "I count 12 guards on the outer ring," she said quietly. "Another 8 near the main storage buildings. 2 heavy weapons platforms by the landing pad." "Same as the scouts reported," Jacob confirmed. "Their patrol patterns are consistent. They change shifts in 40 minutes." Anna nodded slowly. The Keth were disciplined soldiers, but they were also predictable. They followed orders perfectly, never deviating from their assigned patterns. In some ways, that made them dangerous. In other ways, it made them vulnerable. "Remember the plan?" she told her fighters. "Fast and quiet. We hit the fuel storage first, then grab whatever supplies we can carry. We are gone before their backup arrives. No heroes, no unnecessary risks. We sue." "I'll vibe to fight another day." The attack began 20 minutes later. 2 teams circled around 2 flank positions while Hannah led the main assault straight through the front. They used captured Keith grenades to take out the heavy weapons platforms, then charged through the smoke and confusion months of guerrilla warfare had taught. The resistance hard lessons about fighting the Keth. Their armor had weak points at the joints and neck. Their communication devices could be jammed with simple radio interference. Their commanders relied heavily on orders from above, which meant that cutting communications caused chaos in their ranks. The fight was brutal but quick. 11 Keth soldiers died in the first 2 minutes. The rest fell back toward the main buildings, calling for reinforcements that would not arrive in time. When the fuel storage exploded, lighting up the entire forest with a massive orange fireball. Hannah's team was already fading into the trees. They carried stolen medical supplies, ammunition, food, and most importantly, 3 intact Keth communication devices that could be studied and exploited. "Good work," Hannah told her fighters when they gathered at their hidden camp 2 hours later. Everyone was exhausted but alive. "This is how we win. Not in one big battle, but in 1,000 small cuts. We bleed them slowly. We make them afraid to travel our roads, afraid to guard our buildings, afraid to sleep at night." Far above the Earth, in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, Admiral Catherine Moore commanded what was left of humanity's space fleet. The Valiant had been destroyed 3 months ago, but Catherine had escaped aboard a shuttle before the ship went down. She had relocated to a secret command center hidden inside a hollowed-out asteroid. The facility was cramped and uncomfortable, but it was invisible to Keith's sensors. And every week, new ships arrived from hidden shipyards scattered throughout the belt. "Report," Catherine said as she entered the small operations room. Captain Dennis Parks stood up from his console. He was a young officer, only 30 years old, but the war had aged him. His eyes had the tired look of someone who had seen too much death. "We have finished construction on 3 more destroyers, Admiral. That brings our total to 47 operational vessels. And the new weapon systems. The engineers say 2 more weeks until they are ready for deployment. But the initial tests look very promising. The technology we captured from the Keth is helping us close the gap. We will never match them ship for ship, but we can hurt them now. We can make them bleed." Catherine studied the tactical display that showed Keth's positions throughout the solar system. The aliens had committed fewer ships to Earth orbit than expected. Their confidence in their ground forces had led them to redeploy vessels elsewhere, hunting down human ships and colonies throughout nearby space. It was a mistake. Catherine intended to make them pay for it. "Begin detailed planning for Operation Counterpunch," she ordered. "It is time we reminded the Keth that humanity still has a fleet." On Earth, the resistance networks had grown far beyond anything the Keth had anticipated. Every occupied city had its secret cells, its hidden safe houses, its carefully concealed stores of weapons and supplies. Information flowed through encrypted channels that the aliens could not crack. The underground government that President Martinez led kept moving from place to place, always one step ahead of Keth patrols. Martinez herself was holding a secret meeting with resistance leaders in a basement beneath the ruins of Chicago when the warning came through. Keth patrol approaching, reported Kelly Washington, her security chief. Kelly was a former Secret Service agent, tough and professional. 12 soldiers and 2 armored vehicles. 2 blocks away and closing fast. How did they find us? Someone asked. Does not matter right now, Martinez said calmly. She grabbed her tablet and headed for the escape tunnel. Everyone out. You know the emergency protocols? Scatter and regroup at the backup locations. The meeting dissolved like smoke in the wind. Each resistance leader vanished through a different escape route, carrying vital information back to their cells. Martinez emerged from a drainage pipe on the outskirts of the city, where a young woman with a battered old motorcycle was waiting for her. Madam President, the woman said, handing her a helmet. We need to move. They rode through the dark streets for 2 hours, weaving between Keth patrols, past burning buildings and checkpoints. Finally, they reached a safe house in the ruins of a suburb, where hot food and a secure communication terminal were waiting. Martinez ate quickly, then began reviewing the latest intelligence reports. The news was mixed. Losses continued everywhere, but so did small victories. A supply convoy ambushed in Europe. A communication tower destroyed in Asia. A Keth commander assassinated in South America. Death by 1,000 cuts. Just as Hannah Shaw had said, the Keth overseer, a towering alien called Vreth, studied similar reports aboard his command ship in orbit. His forearms moved restlessly as he read about the day's losses. More supplies destroyed. More soldiers killed. More time wasted on a species that should have surrendered months ago. These humans are not behaving according to projections, he said to his aide. Every other species accepted our rule within 30 planetary rotations. These creatures have resisted for over 180. Perhaps we should request additional forces from the Dominion, the aide suggested. Vreth considered this. Requesting reinforcements would be seen as weakness. It would damage his standing with the High Council, but continuing to lose soldiers and resources was also unacceptable. Not yet, he decided. These humans will break eventually. All species do. It is simply a matter of time and pressure. But as he watched another explosion light up the surface below, Vreth felt something unfamiliar. It took him a moment to recognize it. It was doubt, and in the shadows of Earth and the darkness of space, humanity prepared for the day when they would strike back with everything they had. The attack on the Queth command ship came exactly 1 year after the invasion had begun. Admiral Catherine Moore had spent months preparing for this moment. She had built her fleet in secret. She had trained her crews until they could fight in their sleep. She had studied every piece of captured Keth technology and learned every enemy tactic. Now it was time to use everything they had learned. All ships, execute jump on my mark. Catherine ordered from the bridge of her new flagship, the carrier Defiance. Around her, officers worked at their stations with focused intensity. The bridge was quiet except for the hum of computers and the soft beeping of instruments. Everyone knew what was at stake. 3.2. Mark. 43 Terran vessels vanished from the asteroid belt and reappeared directly above the Keth orbital command platform. The alien fleet was caught completely by surprise. Their sensors had never detected the human ships hiding among the rocks. They had never imagined that humanity could launch an offensive of this size. The new human weapons fired first. The technology had been reverse-engineered from captured Keth equipment and then improved with human innovations. Energy beams and missiles tore into the enemy ships before they could raise their shields or return fire. Focus all weapons on their flagship, Catherine commanded. Her voice was calm and clear, the voice of someone who had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. All fighter squadrons launch immediately. This is what we have been preparing for. Commander Nathan Price led the fighter assault. He had survived the first day of the war aboard the Relentless, and he had fought in 100 engagements since then. His destroyer had eventually been destroyed in a battle near Mars, but Nathan had escaped and transferred to fighter command. Now he flew at the head of his squadron, the Reapers, diving through the chaos of battle toward the massive Keth command vessel. "Watch your spacing," he called to his pilots over the communication channel. "We need to hit their bridge section at exactly the same time. Concentrate your fire on the same spot." "Copy that, Commander," came the voice of his wingmate, Lieutenant Rosa Mendez. She was a fierce pilot, with quick reflexes and nerves of steel. All weapons armed and ready to fire. The Keth Point defense systems came alive, filling the space around the command ship with deadly energy beams. 3 human fighters exploded in the first attack run. Nathan felt each loss like a punch to the gut, but he kept flying. There was no time for grief. There was only the mission. The surviving fighters broke through the defensive fire and released their missiles at the exact same moment. 12 warheads slammed into the Keth flagship's bridge section simultaneously. The explosion was so bright it was visible from Earth's surface. Direct hit confirmed. The tactical officer reported aboard the Defiance. "The Keth flagship is breaking apart. Their command structure is collapsing." Catherine allowed herself one small moment of satisfaction. Then she turned her attention back to the battle. "Press the attack. Hit them while they are confused. Do not give them time to reorganize." The space battle raged for 6 hours, the longest and largest engagement of the entire war. Human ships fought with desperate courage against an enemy that had once seemed unbeatable. When the firing finally stopped, the Keth orbital fleet had lost more than half its strength. Their command network was shattered. On the ground below, the resistance forces seized the opportunity with both hands. Coordinated uprisings exploded in every major city at exactly the same moment. Cells that had spent months hiding and preparing suddenly launched simultaneous attacks on Keth positions everywhere. In New York, Sergeant Maria Santos led her fighters in an assault on the Keth garrison headquarters. Her squad had grown from the handful of survivors she had led through Times Square on the first day of the war to a force of 300. Hardened guerrilla warriors. "For Earth!" she screamed as they smashed through the garrison gates. "For everyone we have lost." The battle was fierce and bloody. The Keth fought hard, but they were outnumbered and cut off from reinforcements. Their communication systems had been jammed. Their heavy weapons had been sabotaged by resistance infiltrators. They were fighting blind and alone. When the sun rose over Manhattan the next morning, the Keth flag had been torn down from the garrison tower. In its place flew the blue and green banner of the United Terran Federation. Maria Santos stood in the courtyard, covered in blood and ash, and watched her people celebrate. "We did it," said Chris Walker beside her. He was not a scared young private anymore. He was a seasoned veteran with scars on his face and steel in his eyes. "We actually took the city back." "This city," Maria said. "There are more to go." But she was smiling when she said it. Similar scenes played out across the planet. Paris was liberated after 3 days of street fighting. Tokyo was freed when resistance forces seized the main Keth communication hub and broadcast false orders. Moscow, London, Sydney, Cairo, city after city rose up and threw off their occupiers in a wave of defiance that swept around the entire world in her mobile command center. President Martinez watched the reports flood in with tears streaming down her face. After a year of hiding, a year of running, a year of watching her people suffer and die, something was finally changing. "Are retreating," General Huang reported. Or his voice cracked with emotion that he could not hide. "The Keth ground forces are pulling back to fortified positions. They are abandoning the cities." "It is not over yet," Martinez said, wiping her eyes. "They still have ships and soldiers. They can still hurt us." "I know," Huang replied. "But this is the beginning of the end. I can feel it." In orbit, Overseer Vreth watched the disaster unfold with something close to disbelief. His command ship had been destroyed. His fleet had been crippled. His ground forces were being pushed back everywhere. For the first time in his long career, he faced the possibility of defeat. He transmitted a priority message to the Dominion. "High Council, requesting immediate reinforcement and authorization to use total destruction weapons against the planet." The response came after an unusually long delay. Reinforcement denied. Total destruction denied. Withdrawal authorized. Species designated human to be classified as persistent threat. Quarantine protocols to be implemented. Vreth read the message 3 times, unable to believe what he was seeing. The Dominion was ordering a retreat. In 100,000 years of conquest, the Dominion had never retreated from a target species until now. He looked at the tactical display, at the burning wreckage of his fleet, at the cities on the planet below that were flying human flags again. What are these creatures? He wondered aloud. His aide had no answer. In the days that followed, the momentum shifted completely to humanity's side. The Keth abandoned positions they could no longer defend. They fell back toward their remaining strongholds, while human forces harassed them every step of the way. Hannah Shaw led her resistance fighters into Seattle as the last Keth transport lifted off. The city was damaged and scarred, but it was free. 1 year ago, I almost died in the ocean, she told Jacob Cole as they watched the alien ship disappear into the clouds. I thought it was over. I thought we had lost everything. We nearly did, Jacob replied, but we did not. Hannah took a deep breath of the cold, clean air. We did not. Across the planet, humanity celebrated. People danced in the streets and embraced strangers and wept with joy. After a year of darkness, there was finally light. But the war was not over yet. The Keth still had forces in the solar system. They still had ships and weapons. The final chapter remained to be written, and humanity intended to write it themselves. The Keth withdrawal from Earth took 3 long months. They did not leave peacefully. Every base they abandoned, they filled with hidden bombs and traps. Every building they surrendered, they sabotaged and poisoned. They destroyed water treatment plants and power stations. They left behind automated weapon systems programmed to kill anything that moved. The Keth wanted humanity to remember them through pain. But despite everything, they left Admiral Catherine Moore's fleet, now numbering over 100 warships. Crewed by veterans who had learned to fight against impossible odds, chased them at every step. They hunted Keth vessels through the asteroid belt and around the moons of Jupiter. They destroyed supply ships and troop transports and communication relays. On the ground, resistance forces made the Keth pay for every kilometer they retreated. Ambushes and raids and booby traps of their own turned the withdrawal into a nightmare for the alien soldiers. And slowly, painfully, the occupation came to an end. The formal Keth withdrawal from Earth happened on a cool October morning, exactly 2 years after the invasion had begun. The ceremony took place in what had once been the United Nations building in New York City. The structure was scarred by battle damage, its windows shattered, its walls marked by plasma burns. But it was still standing. Overseer Vreth stood on one side of a simple table. He was the highest-ranking Keth commander left in the solar system. His black armor was dented and scratched, evidence of how hard the final months had been. President Alina Martinez stood on the other side, flanked by Admiral Moore and General Huang. Your species has proven more difficult than anticipated, Vreth said, through his translation device. His voice was flat, revealing nothing of what he might be feeling. The Dominion does not concede defeat. We recognize strategic repositioning. Martinez kept her face completely neutral. She had learned long ago not to show emotion in negotiations. You can call it whatever you want. The result is the same. You're leaving our world. You're establishing a quarantine zone around your star systems. No Keth vessel will enter your territory. No human vessel will be permitted to leave it. Vreth's 4 arms gestured in a complex pattern that might have meant frustration or anger. You are being isolated, not freed. You are being contained like the dangerous animals you are. We will take it, Martinez replied simply. The treaty was signed. Both species placed their marks on the document, making it official. The 2-year nightmare was finally over in the weeks that followed. Humanity began the long process of rebuilding everything they had lost. The final death toll was staggering. Over 400 million people had died during the occupation. Entire cities lay in ruins. Ecosystems had been poisoned. Economies had collapsed. Infrastructure had been destroyed. It would take generations to fully recover from what had happened. But humanity would recover. They had proven that much already. Admiral Catherine Moore retired from active service 6 months after the war ended. She was 64 years old now, and the weight of command had taken its toll on her body and mind. But she remained as an advisor to Terran Naval Command, helping to plan the rebuilding of the fleet. Her final official act was the dedication of the Remembrance, a massive memorial station built in Earth orbit. The structure was shaped like a ring, covered with the names of every person who had died during the war. Over 400 million names, each one carefully recorded and preserved. They gave everything, Catherine said at the dedication ceremony. She stood at a podium looking out at thousands of gathered dignitaries in the billions, more watching through broadcast screens. Every soldier who fell in battle, every civilian who refused to surrender, every mother and father and child who died rather than submit to alien rule. They are the reason we stand here today as a free people. She paused, her voice catching slightly. We must never forget what they sacrificed. We must never forget what we learned about ourselves during those dark years. We learned that humanity can be pushed to the very edge of extinction and still refuse to give up. We learned that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else is more important than fear. We learned that we are capable of remarkable cruelty, but also remarkable kindness and bravery and love. She looked up at the stars visible beyond the station's windows. The universe is vast and full of dangers we do not yet understand. The Keth were the first, but they will not be the last. Other threats will come. But now we know what we are made of. Now we know that we can face anything. Commander Nathan Price, now promoted to captain, took command of the Defiance after Admiral Moore retired. His assignment was to patrol the edge of the quarantine zone, watching for any sign of Keth's return. It was lonely duty, months of travel through empty space with nothing to see but stars. Nathan did not mind. After everything he had been through, he appreciated the quiet. President Martinez served 2 more terms in office, guiding humanity through the difficult years of Reconstruction. She established the Memorial Day holiday to honor those who had died. She oversaw the rebuilding of cities and the healing of wounds, both physical and psychological. When she finally stepped down from the presidency at age 61, she gave one last speech to the people she had led through the darkest time in human history. We were tested, she said. The Keth came to our world expecting us to surrender. They had conquered 1,000 species before us. Every single one had eventually given up and accepted their rule. They expected us to do the same. She smiled slightly. They were very surprised when we did not. On a quiet hillside overlooking the rebuilt Times Square, Maria Santos visited a simple stone memorial. The names of every resistance fighter who had died in New York were carved into the rock. Thousands of names representing thousands of lives given for freedom. She came here every year on the anniversary of the liberation. She would stand before those carved names and remember faces and voices and moments of courage. Chris Walker stood beside her, as he always did. He was 42 now, a senior officer in the new Terran Defense Force. His hair was going gray, and lines had formed around his eyes. But he still stood straight and tall. You think they will come back? He asked, the Keth. Maria considered the question. In the sky above them, she could see the lights of the orbital shipyards where new warships were being built every day. Humanity was not going to be caught unprepared again. Maybe, she said. Probably, eventually. But if they do, we will be ready for them. She touched the memorial stone gently. We will always be ready, far beyond the quarantine zone, in the heart of Dominion space. The Keth High Council debated endlessly about what to do with the species called humanity. Some members demanded a new invasion, a complete destruction campaign that would wipe humans from existence. Others warned that such an effort would cost far more than anyone wanted to pay. In the end, they chose to wait. To watch from a distance, to study these strange creatures who simply refused to act like any other species in the galaxy, and in the back of every Keth mind, there was a new emotion when they thought about humans. It was not something they were used to feeling. They had been the conquerors, the rulers, the masters of 100,000 worlds for countless generations. The emotion might have been respect for a worthy enemy. It might have been fear of what humanity would become in the darkness between stars. Human ships patrolled their borders. They kept watch for threats. They prepared for battles that might never come. They carried with them the memory of what they had survived and the knowledge of what they were capable of. The Keth demanded surrender. Humanity had answered with war. And in the end, it was not humanity who had broken. The future stretched out before them, uncertain and full of challenges yet to come. There would be other alien species out there. There would be new dangers and new enemies. The universe was vast and often cruel, but whatever came next, humanity would face it standing up. They had earned that right. They had paid for it in blood, and they would never, ever surrender again.